Turkey is gearing up for its presidential and parliamentary election on Sunday. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is giving a campaign rally today in the south of the country. Speaking earlier, he said his ruling AK party could try to form a coalition government if it fails to get a majority. Well, to talk a bit more about all of this ahead of the vote, let's bring in Turkish analyst and author Ziya Meral. Thank you so much for joining us. This election now just 3 days away. The president still campaigning with another big rally tonight. He said that he's not against eventually forming a coalition. Is he, do you think, afraid that he just might lose this time around?
I think this time around there is a legitimate concern expressed clearly by him and his party that they might not be able to get the majority that they need, both for the result of the presidential election, i.e. he needs 50% plus, 51% plus to be able to be the president, but also they want to maintain a majority in the parliament, and they need more than 300 seats in the new parliamentary setting to be able to do that. So they're acutely aware that economic questions around foreign policy, democracy, human rights, and grievances across party lines, and the new momentum in the opposition parties that we're observing is challenging a lot of the middle votes that they've been aiming at as the swing votes that they could have appealed to. And I think there is a legitimate scenario that we will not see President Erdogan achieve more than 50% of votes in the first round of elections. And if it enters into the second round, which will be 2 Sundays from the first one, then that might be a really close competition for him.
Talk to us a bit more about the big challenger here for president, this opposition leader named Muharrem İnce. Tell us a bit more about him.
He's a unique voice. He's been in the politics, but not as the leader of the main opposition party, CHP. CHP, as the Republican People's Party, always had a fixed constituency, somewhere ranging from 25 to 27%. And Muharrem İnce emerged as a fresh voice, appealing to a much larger audience than CHP's main voters. But we will see how he performs. He's great at communicating, where AKP and Erdogan has failed. But thus far, I did not see much of a thought-through forward policy in regards to what he would do if he was to win the elections come Sunday in terms of his economic policy or his economic team. What will he do in regards to some of the excesses of the new proposed presidential system? How would they curb it? How will they manage the system of governance? And there are a lot of questions about what will happen even if President Erdogan was to win. The new referendum that enabled this shift into the presidential system have not necessarily clarified a lot of ambiguities about the state structures and parliament relationship between the parliament and the president. I'm not really seeing much of that from the opposition figure, yet at the same time, he has clearly galvanized the party's constituency. And for the first time, I think we are set to see an increase, a substantial increase on the votes that CHP as a party gets and Muharrem İnce. If he was to get somewhere from 30 to 35% this Sunday, and the presidential elections therefore has to have a second round 2 weeks from now, I genuinely think he stands a chance. Granted, they can get the Kurdish votes behind them. And CHP traditionally, as the Republican Party, have not necessarily appealed to Kurdish voters due to the 100 years history over Kurdish questions in the country. So a lot of his success depends not just on his performance, but also other opposition parties or the parties that are in the opposition bloc and others such as the HDP to join behind him if the election was to go to the second round.
Erdogan has been in power for some 16 years now. What do average Turks think? I mean, could there be a movement, a voting movement, just to get him out of power? It's
tricky for various reasons. Turkish voters, by and large, have gone with identity politic blocs. So therefore, you could look at some of the main flagship parties in the country and count a certain number of votes as a given, no matter what the party's performance is. For President Erdogan, the main challenge, one of the main challenges, is some 1.2 million voters that will be voting for the first time. In other words, these are young voters that were pretty much born and grown in the Erdogan era that do not have a sense of the grievances that conservative or religious Turks have suffered, which Erdogan's main political ticket has been on that grievance. So how would they vote this election is really not clear. Secondly, there are a lot of challenges in regards to almost some 4 million Syrian refugees in the country, as well as a serious economic downturn on horizon, even though the lira crisis seems to have been contained, at least the current economic policy, it's leading to the right direction. But there's a lot of worries about investors, and the public sees that. And if you look at the recent surveys that have shown shown, for example, an increase in popularity of NATO, for example, and more than 60% of Turks are wanting to see Turkey remain in NATO. Clearly, even his own voters are not too happy with some of the foreign policy tensions that Turkey has been finding itself in. The question is whether or not President Erdogan, if he was to win, he will again somewhat go back to a promising reform agenda that he demonstrated prior to 2014 or 2012. I think it's unlikely. I think he feels that this is a high-stakes election. If he loses, he stands to lose a lot. The current state of emergency is not sustainable, and he himself promised, following the opposition parties, that he will lift it if he was to win it. But I think even if he wins, his job from now on is not easy. We are back to where we were in 2014 with votes that are clearly dropping against him and against the party, because there are some clear issues about performance, state of emergency, and human rights and economy questions.
Ziya, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. We're going to have to step in. Our time is short
Great.
with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. We do appreciate you sharing your expertise. That was a Turkish analyst and author, Ziya Meral. Thank you so much.